Yeah. No, I think this has been really interesting to see the debate evolving over the last even less than a year, where I think it's become a very complicated and contested term, really, net zero. And some of us contributed, as you remember, with this op-ed in August Nyheter that then became a very popular article at Climate Home News, which debunked myths around net zero and offsets. So it's great read for anyone who hasn't followed that. And I think it really was quite useful to pinpoint some of the key fundamental issues around the problems of promoting net zero without really being clear on what really needs to happen, which is really going to real zero, obviously, and to also be clear that this is a very urgent matter, and that I think the IPCC Ar6 is just reinforcing that even more. We need to get to zero emissions as quickly as possible. And really, I think in this too, it's quite important to be clear that when we talk about carbon budgets, it's a social construction. Obviously, we set up an idea of a carbon budget, but it's based on assumptions of risk, acceptable risk, and there's a whole lot of other uncertainties. So there's no safe landing space whatsoever. We might be crossing, or we might have crossed tipping points that we don't really know yet. We can can happen at any point. We're way beyond any safe ways. So I think that the point, the key take home, again reinforced by IPCC, is that we need to talk about maximization. It's not about finding out some best cost benefit kind of trajectory to get to lower emissions. It's about getting to zero as fast as absolutely possible with equity and justice considerations, so we don't screw the people who are most vulnerable and have done the least to contribute to the problem in the process. But it's a radical change of pretty much everything in our societies, and that's really about real zero, which of course have tremendous implications on all our systems, economics and transportation and housing and energy production, and of course our lifestyles and consumption patterns and so on and so forth. So but it's been really interesting to see how, because of course the problem with net zero is that scientifically it's correct. There is a residual. We have to, if we're going to get to zero or even net reductions, we need to remove in good ways. But when you don't define what the net really is about, it opens up for smoke screens and false solutions, including offsets, obviously, and ideas of future technologies that will remove vast amounts of carbon dioxide. And you can take on a commitment to a long-term target, and it really doesn't mean anything about, you know, what you do today or tomorrow. And that's happening very much in the debate, as we've seen. All companies even going for net zero, but planning on continuing production. Countries having very lofty targets. So I think we're seeing now a trend where net zero becomes a contested term just because it's not wrong in itself, but it's just opens up for deception and some actors using it to evade action. If you haven't seen the article that was published in The Conversation by Bob Watson, former IPCC and IPCC chair, and James Dyke, who was also co-signatory to our Climate Home /Dagens Nyheter article, it's absolutely a must read. I have hardly seen a scientist coming out so clearly and so self-critical in a way on something where they basically say this is a fraud, we were wrong, we have to speak truth, and we have to get away from this. It's a dangerous distraction, I think. The title of the article is Net Zero. So without taking too much more time, I think it certainly is a good basis maybe for a more in-depth conversation, also that article, the Conversation article.